Hey, welcome back to Creating Creative Chaos. So it's been a while since I've done an episode. Initially, I've been working on one talking about the historical dangers of clowns, but I've been kind of hitting that topic a bit hard lately in my real life. In fact, I ended up dressed up as a scary clown and handing out candy to small children on Halloween, which I never do. So I thought I would give it a rest for a little bit and maybe bring that one up a little later. Uh, Still got a little work to do on it. But I did want to do an episode about a little bit of kind of continuing that theme of some considerations if you want to write, quote unquote, realistic science fiction. And in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about the economic impacts of faster than light travel. Um, so first off, I'm not going to spend this episode beyond just the very basics of talking about kind of the mechanics of faster than light travel. I mean, there's plenty of other stuff out on YouTube with people that are quite frankly more knowledgeable than I am, and do a better job of talking about the different types of theoretical faster than light travel and the technologies and all that stuff. I'm also not going to talk too much about the economics of faster than light civilization, because I've done that a little bit before. What kind of impact that would have on trade and all that stuff. Because to be perfectly honest, if you do have faster than light travel, a lot of the same trade issues, economic issues that we have today would kind of translate into that pretty well. And by that I mean you would only be trading things that are economically viable, issues with scarcity, all that stuff. I may do a more in-depth episode on that a little later, but for our purposes here today, I'm not going to talk too much about that. What I'm really going to be interested in is talking about kind of these baseline economic impacts that faster than light travel would have on how you get between the colonies. And this, I'm going to break it down into two broad areas. The first of which is if you have a faster than light technology that's static, how that would actually impact what sort of interstellar civilization you have. And what I mean by static is that it's not based on a ship. This faster than light thing is maybe specific, I don't know, space lanes or weaknesses in the universal fabric that would link different systems and allow you to go faster. Or probably more realistically, these would be something like artificially created wormholes that can link you between different star systems so that you can basically go to them a lot faster. Or maybe even something like shows up in the Mass Effect games where there are certain structures there that you can use to travel more quickly between widely distant star systems. Um, so there's that. Then the other one would be the kind of the more traditional one, like what kind of civilization would come across if you actually have faster than light drives mounted on spaceships, which is, I think, the thing that we're more used to. Tends to be a little more common in the literature and in our uh, movies and TV shows and things like that. Um, but what I don't think gets a lot of play in the stories and that are the actual economic costs of creating these faster than light technologies, and how that cost would actually play out in the civilizations that get created from them. And this is relying on the assumption that creating a faster than light drive or gate is going to be a fairly difficult and complex, and by that rationale, an expensive proposition. And I don't think that a lot of the TV shows or literature or anything like that take into account just how expensive it would be to create a faster than light drive, as opposed to a drive that's designed just to operate within a system, like let's say a standard fusion drive or something like that. So let's address that and let's think about that. And let's start with the idea of a static gate type of technology. And this would be basically, I'm just going to go with the artificial wormhole thing, but it can translate into pretty much any static faster than light technology that you want to use. But let's operate under the assumption that building a gate uh, isn't cheap. So what does this mean for the type of civilization that would actually come about by creating by having these expensive, very complicated, very hard to build gates? Um, and the first and most obvious thing is that you're not going to build these things, go all through the time and effort to do it, just to stick it into a star system that doesn't have economic or political or strategic value to your civilization. That's kind of a no-brainer thing, but it's also something that doesn't tend to get a lot of play. These things, these technologies, most of the time they just seem to be popping up gates willy-nilly here and there, which doesn't make a lot of sense um, economically. So what does this mean? That means you're only going to put these things in systems, like I said before, that have a lot of strategic uh, value to your civilization. That's either because of their location or more likely because of the resources that they have available to them. So what that means is that a civilization that relies on static gates uh, uh, is going to actually spend a lot of time scouting before it actually gets to a system. And this can be done by a wide variety of ways. I mean, probably the most common, I would think, at least initially, would be high-powered telescopes, some way of scanning potential colonies or star systems before you actually send anything to them. Um, and then once you have that scanned, it's going to be, again, because it's pretty, you don't want to, spend all this time and energy sending a ship to build a gate in this target star system, unless you're actually fairly confident that it's going to be worth the time and effort to do that. So probably this a civilization like that would actually have, like, say, follow-up probes, most likely automated, but I mean, sure, you could probably have them on a ship that is kind of a light hugger, that gets close to the speed of light, as close as you can feasibly with your technology level. Maybe have the crew asleep, which makes sense, and then basically go there and actually survey the system and make sure that the cost of building a gate in the system is going to be worthwhile. And then once you've done that, again, assuming you don't have faster than light drives available, you would send a ship, again, a light hugger ship, something that gets close to the speed of light, with the facilities and the technology and the capability to actually build a gate. And then once you've built a gate, you can go back and forth between. So civilization like this would have kind of natural choke points, which we've talked about in earlier episodes, in that these gates are only going to be in systems that are going to be very valuable and important to whatever civilization that you've created. Now, this isn't to say that every colony would have a gate associated with it. I think it's entirely possible and feasible to have the gate in a system that's uh, economically important, like, say, because of resources or whatever. But maybe nearby colonies that have colonizable planets or planets that can be terraformed or something like that would mainly only be linked to this gate via light hugger ships that we talked about. Um, so in this case, you would have certain systems that would be very politically powerful, and then maybe you'd have a whole bunch of ancillary systems who would be less powerful politically or economically or militarily, that are maybe linked to these kind of gate systems by slower ships. Um, and that, I think, makes a lot of sense if you're talking about the static, faster than light technologies and trying to build a civilization or some sort of government some sort of interstellar government around that. Um, there's definitely going to be a kind of a natural disparity between the political and economic power of a gated system as opposed to one that isn't. So consider that. But now let's move on to faster than light drives. In many ways, that breaks around, it goes around the whole problem of having these sort of natural bottlenecks and these sort of natural accumulations of political and economic power in gated systems, because any ship could go faster than light, right? Um, but what I don't think gets a lot of play is that I would think, given the technology level and the complexity involved going faster than light, that a faster than light drive would be more expensive than a standard intersystem drive, which I know I mentioned a little earlier in this podcast. So let's think about that. So does it make sense if you've got these more expensive and complicated faster than light drives? Does it make sense to give every ship out there one of them? Um, and I don't think it does because, at least in an economic sense, um, sure, you could have these system ships, relatively cheap with their system level drives, creating a trade network or an economic system within a specific star system. Um, but relying on these more expensive drives to create an interstellar civilization or interstellar economy is going to be a lot more problematical. Because again, you've got to make the trade, uh, you know, economically viable enough that you could actually support the expense of building and maintaining these faster than light engines. So how do you get around that? Well, it makes sense to give military ships faster than light travel or drives, for the simple reason that the advantages that you get from being able to show up before your opponent even knows you're there really you know kind of goes without saying. It also might make sense to maybe have a small number of large, say, bulk merchantmen which have faster than light drives. Um, Again, because you would actually need to get enough, the economy of scale would come into play here. You'd actually need to get enough material or enough cargo on these ships to make it economically viable for them to go between systems to pay for themselves and to generate a profit for their owners and operators. Um, I don't know that there's anything out there that would be valuable enough, but yeah, sure, you could either invent something or invent scarcity to make it valuable to allow these ships to carry cargo that's valuable enough to make an faster than light drive economically viable. Um, Depending on what communications technologies you're using, it also might make sense to maybe have some sort of courier boats with faster than light drives. And then these would be boats that would, again, this is assuming that you don't have any faster than light communications technology that links your empire together. Having some sort of courier boat that would travel between systems would make sense. Um, and the traveler game world, if you haven't played that before, does that pretty well. Basically, they link their empires together with couriers, which basically quickly go between systems to exchange information, make sure that everybody knows what's happening, what's going on, and that the central authorities know what's going on so they can respond. Um, but I would actually throw out a different idea, and one that doesn't get a lot of play, and that's the idea of a sort of faster than light carrier type craft. In the Regnum Humanitas universe, I call them spindle ships. And essentially, what these are large ships which have a faster than light drive affiliated with or built into them, which are then used to transport system ships between the different star systems that are linked together in this interstellar civilization. So what that means is that you don't need to build faster than light drives on all of your cargo ships, for example. All you have to do is just attach your cargo ships to this spindle ship. It goes using its faster than light drive the target system. It releases all these merchantmen and for whatever other ships that you have, and then they can actually use their system drives to exchange their cargo, do all that stuff, and then they come out and then they reattach to a spindle ship to go on to their next system, so that you can actually link this interstellar civilization economically. And pretty well, because you don't have to actually put the expense of building a boatload of faster than light drives. You can actually concentrate, build one drive, for example, and then concentrate all your efforts on maintaining it and et cetera with that. Okay. So, and you can even do that with, say, military ships, although again, this would be a pretty big vulnerability if somebody could take out one of these faster than light ships. But you could have a faster than light carrier, for example, and then you attach all of your destroyers and cruisers and frigates and fighters and all that stuff to this military spindle ship. It jumps into the system, releases its forces. Again, it's a more economically viable and cheaper way of linking your civilization militarily, politically, economically, without relying on a whole bunch of separate faster than light drives. Okay. And again, this really does rely on the assumption that building a faster than light drive is going to be more expensive than building a drive that's designed to work within a star system, which I think kind of seems reasonable to me. Has the added advantage of, if your spindle ship does experience some sort of difficulty in between different star systems, and explode, and assuming it doesn't just explode or destroy everything, these actual starships, which are attached to it, can actually serve as kind of lifeboats for the crews and cargo, so that you don't necessarily lose them all. And especially if you've got like cryo sleep or hibernation sleep technology, you could conceivably and economically track wherever the spindle ship broke down and then go and retrieve your passengers and your cargo without losing too much money. Okay. So consider that when you're talking about interstellar civilizations, specifically ones that are linked by faster than light technologies. Think about if you want it to be a static technology, how that's going to make your interstellar civilization look. And I would again argue that that would create sort of a natural disparity between systems that have gates as opposed to ones that maybe have colonies but no gates. So that kind of creates a sort of a natural friction point, political and military friction point, an economic friction point between these systems. And you could create pretty interesting stories, I think, around that. Alternatively, if you want to have, and actually, I would say that the Expanse does a really good job of that too, of kind of giving you an example of a civilization that's linked by static gates, faster than light gates. Alternatively, if you want to have faster than light drives, which would give you your civilization a lot more flexibility. Consider why every ship would need a drive and how, if a drive is more expensive to create, how that would actually end up making your interstellar civilization look in the long term. If only certain specific ships or governments are able to build ships that are faster than light capable. And like I said, the way that I got around it, and something that you might want to consider, is maybe consider something like a faster than light carrier or a spindle ship, as I call them that just because they look like spindles in my head. So, and it's also the image I use for this podcast. So consider, having very few faster than light ships that actually are responsible for transporting sublight ships between the various systems, so that they can engage in trade and military attacks and all that sort of stuff. And consider how that would make your civilization look and interact. Okay. Um, that's all I've got today. Hope you're staying warm and all that. It's kind of chilly here in Georgia. And maybe I'll get into my clown rant in a couple months or something. It's going to be kind of epic. I actually went and I don't know. I don't want to get into it. I created an entire history detailing the dangers that like clowns have posed to humanity over our civilization. But more realistically, uh, please take into account the impact that the faster and light technologies that I talked about in this episode would impact your story, and just consider them. All right, and you guys have a good day.